In 2005, a tragedy struck a quiet town in Indiana, USA, disrupting the peace and shocking the local community. Pastor Mark Harrison's family, once seen as a symbol of integrity and generosity, suddenly became the center of a disturbing investigation after his 17-year-old daughter, Lisa Harrison, vanished without a trace. Questions quickly surfaced, and beneath the family's perfect appearance, a hidden darkness began to emerge, leaving the community in disbelief. Mark Harrison, 45, was a pastor and a trusted spiritual leader in his town. Outwardly, he seemed like a man of strong morals, devoted to his church and his congregation. His sermons emphasized mercy, forgiveness, and the importance of family, and his words were well regarded, solidifying his respected position within the community. However, behind his respectable image, Mark concealed a dark and frightening side, a reality painfully known to his own family, especially his daughter Lisa. To his neighbors and church members, Mark was a principled, even admirable, figure. But within the walls of his home, he was far different. To his family, he was not the compassionate pastor everyone saw. Instead, he was an abusive father, feared for his violent and controlling actions. During the day, he appeared to be a strict but caring father. Yet, at night, his demeanor shifted entirely as he exerted power and control, particularly over Lisa. His abuse went beyond physical harm, cutting deeply into her spirit. Mark used cruel words that eroded Lisa's self-worth, leaving her feeling trapped in an invisible cage of fear and pain. She was not only frightened by her father but also terrified of the consequences if his true nature was ever exposed. Years of manipulation and control kept her silent, with fear acting as her constant companion. Mark's daughter lived in constant fear, too anxious to tell anyone about the abuse. She worried that if she spoke up, no one would believe her, especially given the deep respect the community held for her father. While society saw Mark as a beacon of morality, his family was forced to endure his hidden darkness. Mark used his public image as a shield, a way to protect himself from suspicion. He knew that in the eyes of others he was a good man, a respectable pastor, and that any accusations against him would likely seem unbelievable. This only intensified his daughter's feelings of despair and isolation. Mark understood how to keep up appearances. He would give his daughter gifts or show affection in public, creating a perfect cover to hide his true nature. These superficial gestures left his daughter feeling even more helpless and confused, making it nearly impossible for others to suspect him. People frequently praised Mark as a model father, making the truth even harder to uncover. Mark and Lisa lived in a small home with Lisa's mother, Sarah Harrison, a gentle and patient woman who often had to travel for work. Her absence left Lisa alone with Mark for stretches of time. During these times, without her mother's protection, Mark committed horrific acts against his daughter, hidden behind his reputation as a respected and honorable father in the community. No one could have imagined that he was abusing his daughter right in their own home. Lisa, despite being a strong and intelligent young woman, became a victim of the father she had once trusted. At first, fear, shame, and a feeling of being completely controlled kept her from telling anyone what was happening. She endured her suffering in silence, terrified that if she spoke out, no one would believe her and that her father's punishment would only worsen. The mental torment Mark inflicted on Lisa trapped her in a vicious cycle of hopelessness. When her mother, Sarah, was away, Lisa's nights became an unending nightmare. Mark would sneak into her room, using every opportunity to suppress and humiliate her. During those moments, Lisa felt entirely alone, with no one to call for help. Mark threatened that if she ever revealed the truth, he would not only destroy her life but tear their family apart. Fear and guilt kept Lisa silent. Yet, no one's suffering can last forever. One night, while Sarah was away on a business trip, Mark entered Lisa's room again. Worn down from years of abuse, something inside Lisa finally snapped. She was no longer the controlled and terrified girl she had once been. Resentment, anger, and pain that had been building for years exploded in her. She screamed, threatened to tell her mother everything, and even declared she would go to the police. Lisa's defiance threw Mark into chaos and panic he had never experienced before. To him, the exposure of his terrible secret was his greatest fear, not only because it would end his position of respect in the community, but also because it would destroy everything he had built: his family, his reputation, and his power. For Mark, Being exposed wasn't just a personal downfall, it meant the complete collapse of his life. Feeling cornered and threatened by Lisa's resistance, Mark's fear and anxiety quickly twisted into anger and desperation. Panic overtook him as he imagined being publicly exposed as an abuser and losing everything. For him, this outcome was unacceptable. In his distorted mind, he made a horrifying decision: he had to silence Lisa forever to protect his secret. In Mark's mind, there was no other way out. On that fateful night in August 2005, tension in the Harrison home reached a breaking point. Mark and his daughter Lisa faced off in a heated confrontation. After years of enduring abuse and control, Lisa finally decided to stand up to her father and tell the truth. She was no longer afraid and was determined to end Mark's brutality, even if it meant facing serious consequences. Panicked, Mark could not accept the idea of his crimes being exposed. He knew that if Lisa revealed the truth, his reputation, his status in the community, and his family life would be utterly destroyed. Lisa's unwavering stance, her promise to reveal everything he had done, pushed Mark over the edge. In a fit of rage, he lost all sense of consequence and, in a moment of hysteria, lunged at Lisa, grabbing her by the neck.
Lisa struggled to break free, but his grip was too strong. Her breaths grew weaker until finally she stopped moving. Her eyes, wide with panic and terror, slowly faded. When Mark realized he had killed his daughter, he froze, stunned by what he had done. It wasn't grief or regret that overwhelmed him. It was fear. Fear of being discovered and punished. Instead of facing his guilt, Mark decided he had to hide his crime at all costs. After regaining his composure, he dragged Lisa's body from her bedroom to the back of the house. The weight of her body didn't stop him. It only fueled his determination to cover up his actions. He left the house and headed toward a small forest nearby, a place where few people went and where he believed her body would never be found. In the stillness of the night, Mark continued his horrifying work. He dug a shallow grave, just deep enough to conceal Lisa's body, covering it with dirt and leaves to hide any traces. Beneath the earth lay Lisa, a bright, intelligent young girl with so much potential, now silenced forever by the father she once trusted and loved. After finishing, Mark wiped the sweat from his brow and sat down to catch his breath. He knew that burying the body wasn't the hardest part. He would also have to craft a perfect story to avoid suspicion from both the community and the police. When Mark returned home, he prepared the next step of his plan. Carefully, he called the police, sounding panicked and concerned. He reported that Lisa was missing, explaining that she had gone out for her usual evening walk around the area near their house but hadn't returned. His voice trembled, full of worry and anxiety, as though he were a father genuinely concerned for his daughter's safety. The police took his call seriously and immediately sent officers to the scene. When the police arrived at the house, Mark continued to play the part of a distressed, panicked father. He led them to the area where he claimed Lisa often walked, explaining that she had left the house around 8 p.m. After several hours passed without her returning, he said he grew worried and started searching for her himself. When he found no trace of her, he decided to call the police. His story was convincing. Mark knew how to use language and gestures to build trust, and as a respected pastor, no one suspected him. Lisa's disappearance quickly attracted widespread attention from the community. The local press picked up the story, and the entire town joined in the search, hoping to find the missing girl. Volunteer search parties were organized, with community members combing through wooded areas and roads near the Harrison home. Meanwhile, Mark continued to participate in the searches, appearing grief-stricken and desperate. He even went on television, urging anyone with information about Lisa's whereabouts to come forward. Everyone believed he was a heartbroken father, doing all he could to find his daughter. The case soon became the talk of the town. Local newspapers reported updates on Lisa's disappearance daily, and people began to worry that their peaceful town was becoming a place of mysterious kidnappings. Families grew more cautious, limiting how often their children went out at night, and rumors circulated that Lisa's kidnapper might be an outsider, increasing tension throughout the community. Mark, meanwhile, continued to maintain his facade. He attended prayer services for Lisa's safe return and organized church meetings to encourage the community to stay hopeful. Every time he appeared in public, he looked sad and desperate, leaving no one to suspect that he was the one who had taken his daughter's life and was hiding a terrible secret. As time passed, the tension inside Mark grew. Every time someone mentioned continuing the search for Lisa, he felt a surge of pressure and fear that his secret might be uncovered. Although he appeared calm on the outside, Mark was gripped by an internal dread, knowing that if the truth came out, everything he had built would collapse instantly. Days turned into weeks, and despite relentless searching, there was still no trace of Lisa. Despair spread through the community, and people slowly began to accept that Lisa might have been kidnapped, with little hope for her survival. Prayers continued, with Mark leading them, pleading for forgiveness and mercy from God. But inside, his fear grew with each passing day. Each day was a struggle, as he realized the truth could emerge at any moment and that his deception couldn't last forever. Yet, rather than confessing, Mark clung to his fabricated story, hoping it would remain hidden. After weeks of searching yielded no sign of Lisa, the investigation began to stall. Despite extensive efforts by local police and community volunteers, there were no clues as to her whereabouts. Lisa's family, friends, and neighbors were distraught, but it seemed that every lead had gone cold. Meanwhile, Mark continued to play the role of a grieving father, making public appeals for help and leading prayers for her safe return. While the case initially drew widespread sympathy, FBI investigators started to notice inconsistencies in Mark's story. The experienced agents recognized signs they had seen before in similar cases. When no trace of the victim was found over time, it often meant something was amiss. Gradually, suspicion began to shift toward Mark, someone whom no one had previously considered a suspect in his daughter's disappearance. The first red flag for investigators was Mark's unusual calmness and composure. Although he presented himself as a grieving father in public and during interviews, his behavior seemed strangely detached, lacking the genuine anguish expected in such a situation. Mark's unusual composure began to raise suspicions among the FBI. Unlike other parents who have lost a child, he displayed none of the typical emotional signs, such as panic, anxiety, or despair. His lack of genuine emotion and inconsistent answers only fueled the FBI's belief that he was hiding something. Investigators began to dig deeper into the Harrison family dynamics. Through interviews with Lisa's friends and acquaintances, they learned that her relationship with her father wasn't as good as he had portrayed. Several close friends recalled Lisa mentioning the stress and strict control Mark had over her life. Though she never directly spoke of abuse, her hints were enough to prompt investigators to scrutinize the father-daughter relationship more closely. These clues led the FBI to question Mark further. In tense, probing interviews, they pressed him to recount every detail of the night Lisa disappeared. Each time he retold his story, small details and timings changed, exposing inconsistencies. Though he attempted to stay calm, the pressure from investigators caused Mark to falter. To dig deeper, the FBI used scientific methods to gauge his responses, including a behavioral anomaly detector, which tracked signs of stress and anxiety through physical reactions. During this interrogation, Mark showed clear signs of stress, particularly when asked about his relationship with Lisa and the events of the night she disappeared. This evidence, combined with the irregularities in his statements, shifted the investigation's focus. The FBI decided to revisit the area around the Harrison home, where previous searches had turned up nothing. This time, equipped with modern search technology like seismic probes and specialized tools to detect disturbed soil, they conducted a more comprehensive search. After hours of meticulous searching in the woods near the Harrison home, police noticed an area of disturbed soil. When they began to dig, they found clear evidence of a deliberate burial. Soon after, they uncovered Lisa's body, partially decomposed but showing clear signs of violence, including bruises and strangulation marks around her neck. It was evident she had been murdered before being buried. This discovery changed the investigation entirely. Mark Harrison, who had been presenting himself as a grieving, desperate father, was quickly arrested. When confronted with the undeniable evidence of Lisa's body, Mark finally confessed to his crime. However, even as he admitted to killing his daughter, he tried to justify his actions. He claimed that Lisa's death had not been intentional, but the result of a moment of panic. He explained that, on that fateful night, when Lisa threatened to expose him, he lost control. He said his fear of losing his honor and standing in the community drove him to act out of desperation. According to him, he only wanted to stop her from revealing his secret, but things spiraled out of control and he accidentally strangled her. However, Mark's excuses couldn't change the fact that he had deliberately hidden Lisa's body to erase all traces of his crime. Evidence from the crime scene, his conflicting statements, and the discovery of Lisa's body showed that his actions were not a simple outburst, but a calculated effort to conceal the truth and protect himself. Mark Harrison's arrest shocked the entire community, which had once trusted and admired him as a respected pastor. Those who had prayed for Lisa's safety and joined the search now felt deeply betrayed. Following his confession, Mark was quickly taken into custody and his case moved to trial. His admission of guilt, combined with the overwhelming evidence, ensured he would face justice. But no punishment could erase the loss and pain felt by his family and community, who had lost a young, promising girl. Trust but verify. Trust is an essential part of human relationships, yet blind trust can sometimes lead us to overlook important signs that something is wrong. In this story, Mark's community trusted him implicitly because of his respected position as a pastor. His authoritative role and outward show of kindness and morality made it easy for people to believe in his goodness without question. This unexamined trust allowed Mark to manipulate perceptions, creating a safe facade while concealing his harmful actions. The lesson here is to balance trust with discernment. It's wise to look beyond outward appearances and observe consistent actions over time. Verifying doesn't mean distrusting everyone or constantly seeking hidden motives. Rather, it means being open to questioning when things don't add up. If people around Mark had been more aware of inconsistencies, perhaps his abusive actions could have been uncovered earlier. This lesson reminds us that trust doesn't have to mean ignoring our instincts, and it's okay to look for alignment between someone's actions and their words to safeguard ourselves and others. 4. Roles don't define character. This story illustrates how roles or titles can sometimes mask a person's true nature. Mark's role as a pastor symbolized compassion, integrity, and responsibility, leading his community to associate him with those virtues. Yet his actions at home told a different story. Mark's character was defined not by his title, but by his behavior behind closed doors, which was far from the morals he preached. His position in society and the respect he commanded gave him the means to hide his abusive behavior and evade suspicion. This lesson teaches us that a title or societal role does not guarantee a person's integrity or values. It's easy to assume that doctors, teachers, religious leaders, and other authority figures automatically embody moral ideals, but character is shown through consistent actions and how a person treats others, especially when they're not in the public eye. Recognizing this helps us to avoid placing people on a pedestal solely based on their roles, and instead to value them for their genuine behavior and ethical consistency. The strength in breaking the cycle of abuse. Lisa's struggle highlights the isolating and harmful effects of abuse, especially when the abuser is in a position of authority within the family or community. Fear of not being believed, shame, and a sense of loyalty or guilt often trap victims in silence. For years, Lisa endured Mark's control and manipulation because she felt trapped by these emotions. But her eventual decision to confront her father was a powerful moment of resilience and courage. By standing up to him, Lisa took the first step to liberate herself from the cycle of fear, even though it posed serious risks. This lesson emphasizes the critical need to break the silence around abuse. Speaking up is hard, but it can prevent future harm, not only for the individual, but also for others who might be affected by similar situations. When victims confront or expose their abusers, they're not only seeking justice, but also reclaiming their own sense of worth and freedom. Lisa's story illustrates that while the decision to speak up may feel overwhelming, it's often the first step toward healing, support, and ultimately breaking free from the control of an abuser. This lesson encourages others who might be facing abuse to find strength in seeking help, as courage and action can pave the way for change. 1. Appearances can be deceptive. The story brings to light the idea that outward appearances and reality can be vastly different. Mark, the central figure, outwardly projects an image of a kind, devout pastor who cares for his family and community. He uses his respectable appearance as a shield to hide his abusive actions, knowing that people are less likely to question someone they view as morally upright. His ability to maintain a facade allows him to manipulate others' perceptions and continue his harmful behavior without raising suspicion. This lesson serves as a reminder that people may not always be what they seem, especially if they are in positions that naturally command respect or trust. Appearances can be manipulated to mask true intentions, and it's essential to remember that character is proven by actions, not outward image. In daily life, this lesson can help us be more mindful and discerning when forming judgments about others, particularly when warning signs or inconsistencies arise. It encourages us to look beyond the surface and seek a deeper understanding of a person's behavior over time. 2. The importance of speaking up. In the story, Lisa's silence about the abuse she faced allowed it to continue for years. She feared that her father's respected position would make her claims seem unbelievable and that no one would support her if she spoke out.